After taking this humanities class and learning about China's rich culture and history, I realized how different it is from the United States. One of the differences that I found most interesting was China's appreciation and culture around food. Michael Wood from the Chinese Civilizations documentary described it as
another of China's great gifts to humanity.
What's especially prevalent in China's view of cuisine is it's not just a means of getting a human's basic necessities. It's a way to connect people and enjoy the moment.
A cuisine is a whole way of seeing the world. It's one of the simplest and most direct ways in which people can enjoy life, a mark of civilization, and the Chinese excelled in it, as they still do.
Outside of the Chinese Civilizations documentary, we could also see this in other films we viewed. Not only did these films show the deep appreciation of food in Chinese families, but the directors also utilize it in order to foreshadow events or create conflicts, making it one of the unifying themes throughout all of the films. Let's take a look at some of these examples. Looking at To Live, the director did an excellent job of using food in order to bring together individuals or use it as part of the storyline. The first instance we can see this is at the community kitchen, which was recently implemented. China's transforming society was turning communist due to the Chinese Civil War. This means residents were forced to give up some of their personal belongings and values for the greater good. Thus, this community-style kitchen is a perfect example of how food brought people together. We can see everyone going to receive their noodles from the chef and sit with everyone else. A few minutes later in this scene is an example of how the director uses food and community to assist the storyline and foreshadow. Fugui's son dumps his bowl of noodles on a kid's head out of frustration because the kid was mocking his sister. This causes outrage as the kid's father accuses Fugui and his son for being counter-revolutionists. This marks the start of a lot of political turmoil within China and the movie, and thus it was a good use of food and the community kitchen for the movie. Another use of food within To Live was when Fugui's son was handed dumplings and sent off to school. He was never able to eat his dumplings and was sadly killed in an accident by the district chief. At the burial site, the mother brings double the dumplings as an offering to her son, as she is sorry that he never was able to eat the dumplings and that she sent him off to school. In my research, and as seen in many of the films we've watched, food is often offered at gravesites. From nationsonline.org, it says, "Food offerings are a prayer or a wish and can be addressed to ancestors. The offering of food serves to bring ancestors and other beings in the other world closer to oneself. The food offerings serve as a bonding tool to bring both worlds together." What I also uncovered in my research, which I found fascinating, is some foods actually have specific meanings or purposes. Duck represents fertility, egg rolls represent money or wealth, and apples represent wisdom and peace, although these are only a few examples. Dumplings, although they come in various types, I found most often mean togetherness, reunion, and heavenly blessing. Thus, this scene is a perfect example of how China values food in order to bring people together and holds a deeper meaning. My last example of To Live's use of food is towards the end of the film when Fugui's daughter was giving birth and the doctor was escorted to help. Food plays a role here because the doctor requests food in order to work. What ends up happening is he eats too much and falls asleep and is unable to wake up. This was another clever use of food from the director to move the story along. The next film I want to discuss is The Farewell. The director of this film takes advantage of the dinner table to push along the story. After reuniting the family, the dinner table is a site of a lot of cultural conflict. We witness the separation between American and Chinese culture as they fight about which is better. Another time in which the director uses the dinner table is actually to show how food brings people together. At the wedding, we see many dinner tables as the family comes to celebrate the marriage. Food is brought out and they present a toast. As they eat, we witness community building as they enjoy their food and company. My final example from The Farewell, and arguably the most important, is at the gravesite, similar to Live. The family brings offerings such as bananas, oranges, buns, cookies, and cigarettes. They brought these certain items because that's what their grandfather enjoyed. From an offering standpoint, bananas represent education and oranges represent good fortune. Although it isn't clear in the film and may not be directly presented, my research says that sweets and fruits were often presented on round trays. This was done to resemble togetherness. They were offered in eights because 8 was a lucky number and symbolized fortune. The last film I want to analyze is Pushing Hands. In one scene at the dinner table, the grandfather insists that Alex eat some of the Chinese food after Martha puts some American food on his plate. This is an example of how Chu is nervous that Alex and his son are losing their Chinese culture. This is also why he teaches Jeremy Chinese, because he doesn't want him to become Americanized. From a food standpoint, the symbolism for Jeremy's Americanization is him requesting mac and cheese at the dinner table. Another instance at the dinner table shows how Chinese culture perceives food. Chu makes fun of Martha because she only eats vegetables. She does this because she is concerned about her weight. Chu thinks that a meal is meant to have a bit from every food group and is meant to be enjoyed rather than rationed. This shows one of the key differences between Chinese value of food and American. America often perceives food just as a means of fuel, while China sees it as a way to enjoy life and bring together family. Lastly, during Chu's classes, he meets Mrs. Chen that teaches cooking classes. As Mrs. Chen and her class moves into Chu's studio, we can see the class making food. The making of dumplings brings a lot of people together, and we can see smiles on their faces as they learn how to make dumplings. This is a representation of how food sparks conversation and community. Since food holds such a deep value in Chinese culture, I thought I would do some research into some popular dishes and how they were made. I decided to present dumplings because it not only represents togetherness when offered, but is very prevalent in the films we watched. After much research, here is how dumplings are traditionally made. In conclusion, I actually really enjoyed this humanities class and learning about Chinese culture. It was interesting to see how different it is on the other side of the world. From a food standpoint, China values food a lot more than Americans from what I've found. Food for them is a bonding experience, whether that be in creating the meals or eating them around the dinner table with your family. Along with that, food is meant to be enjoyed and better your well-being. To the directors of the films we watched, they were able to use food to display these values. Not only that, but they could utilize it in order to further their story. I hope that Americans could also learn from Chinese culture to appreciate the smaller things and enjoy a family meal around the dinner table.